One. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you, just like me. And today we've got a special guest, my key witness, a man who really needs no introduction, actually, but I am going to do my job here, tell you who he is. He has his own podcast. It's called the Lone Wolf Podcast, where he talks about politics, and lately he's been doing some really great videos about music, like breaking down lyrics, breaking down videos, and doing all kinds of commentary. He brings a real authentic Southern perspective. Please welcome my good friend Charles Anderson.
How you doing, Dave? It's a pleasure to finally be on the Real Music Observer. I've been watching it ever since I met you. You got some really good stuff on this channel. Classic rock, man.
Thank you, sir. Charles, of course, is from Spartanburg, South Carolina. So, when we talk about, some of the stuff going on in the music business these days and some of the controversies that are starting to pop up, and we'll use the word controversy, and Charles came up with that, which I think is a good sanitized sort of catch-all word. Charles has been watching. I've been watching. I actually did a video last week, Charles, about how is Southern rock, the title of the video, and it actually got quite a few views, is Southern rock being canceled? And I put that out there, and I got a few people who sent me very long messages back, and they actually did a lot more of the legwork, breaking down what radio stations are playing these days, what they used to play. See, I'm from the prehistoric age where rock stations used to play Southern rock on a regular basis. I grew up with, Skynyrd, Molly Hatchet, the Outlaws, 38 Special, the Charlie Daniels Band, the Marshall Tucker Band, the Allman Brothers Band, and there are a few others I'm sure I neglected. And then I got into country in the 90s, heaven forbid, and I was listening to things like McBride and the Ride and, Alabama and Confederate Railroad. And now I'm not sure you could say that, which I just did, but we'll figure this out as we go along. So what's some of your opinions on what's going on out there with, I guess, a shift maybe in the culture, or, what say you about some of this?
Well, first we just got to start with getting the big point out here. All this outrage over music, it seems to be it's defending against controversy, the word we're going to use here. They don't want certain groups of folks to be offended, and they think that certain words that may have been used, like where you said the Confederate Railroad, for example, maybe the name of the band, the name of a song, or lyrics within the song have got to be altered. And I know you want to touch on one and here in a little bit. I think you'll name him specifically, but I know there was a guy who's kind of getting his award, stuff yanked away because he's had some association with the Confederate flag in the past. And the thing is, it seems like the group they're afraid to offend isn't the ones really doing the most complaining about these things. You know what I mean? Like, if you sat down and talked to the groups of people who they're worried this stuff is offending, they probably got a lot bigger issues on their plate. But one thing that I will point out here is anyone who is trying to make the accusation that whether it be Southern rock or even a lot of country music is controversial in terms of race or anything, where did a lot of their style get their influence from?
Yeah.
So for example, a lot of people cite country music's big kind of, original superstars being Hank Williams Sr. Of course, I'm wearing the Hank Williams Jr. shirt here, but Hank Williams Sr. was really credited with being the first big star everyone knew in the country music. He kind of took it more mainstream, right?
Yeah.
Hank Williams Sr. got a lot of his influence from a lot of the black kind of blues artists and things of that nature. And Hank Williams Jr. has even spoke about when he was a kid at the house on the weekends that someone would come over and play the piano. It'd be like singing at the house. And his dad would sing, his mom would sing, and the other person who I'm about to name would come over and sing, and he would play the piano. The person who came over was Fats Domino. Now, if you know who Fats Domino is, I mean, we're going way back here to like the 50s or whatnot, but Fats Domino was a black musician, a piano player, had some pretty good, really good music, you know, from what I've heard. But that's where Hank Williams got his influence from.
Yeah.
Fast forward, you take someone like Leonard Skinner. Now, Leonard Skinner, infamously, multiple times over the years, have used certain imagery with their art, T-shirt designs, their, you know, the way they would make their name logo or whatever. They've had some Confederate flag kind of imagery thrown into that.
Yeah.
Okay. But if it's meant to be controversial, if it's meant to stand for the thing so many people claim, then tell me why the group made a song back in their heyday called The Ballad of Curtis Lowe, which then talked about how much respect they had for that style. They paid homage to music that they found to be good, and a lot of that was a lot of the blues, the Southern blues artists, and they incorporated that in with a little bit of rock and roll. Okay. And again, even rock and roll. Who did Elvis get his influence from? So this shouldn't be as controversial as people are making it out to be. And again, I think this is just me personally, from what I'm noticing, the group they're trying to protect isn't even the one doing the complaining about it in the first place. It's a lot of the politically correct Kens and Karens out there who are scared to, you know, that they got to walk on eggshells. To me, it's just way overblown, and it's causing more problems than anything.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I was reading this article a few weeks ago about blues guitarist Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Kenny is from Louisiana, and he broke in the mid 90s, which was really hard to do if you're a blues guitarist. And he had a song called Blue on Black, which actually topped the charts in 96 on the mainstream rock chart. You couldn't get a song like that on rock radio these days. And it was really hard in 96 to get a song on there. And off he went. I mean, he built a following, made some money, obviously, purchased a lot of fine automobiles, and was a car collector. And in his car collection was a nifty replica of the General Lee from a television show that I know you probably have watched, and I grew up watching it. And like I think I might have said in a video, I think I was more interested in Daisy Duke than the car, but it was kind of a split, you know. I mean, if I could get the car in a shot with Daisy Duke, that was like a two-factor, you know, it's like a twofer. But it was just a goofy show, and we all know what's on top of the car. We know what was on there, and apparently it was on Kenny Wayne's car, which I think authenticates the car, because then if it's not, then it's not a replica of the General Lee. No. Supposedly, and I'm not sure if he did this or not, sounded like he reacted to it and said, oh no, I'm going to take that thing that's on the top of the car, I'm going to remove that. And okay, but the controversy, he was supposed to win a blues award, and they basically said, nah, we've decided to withdraw that. And great guitar player. Here's another little kicker, and I know you got a Jimi Hendrix poster behind you, but Jimi Hendrix's bass player used to tour and travel with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, gave this long testimony about how Kenny was the salt of the earth, one of the nicest guys you'll ever hang with. His family is terrific. We got along so well. He's saying my wife used to call Kenny like one of her sons or something to that effect. And I'm just sitting there reading this going, Kenny Wayne Shepherd doesn't deserve this kind of treatment. It seems as though, and he even made the statement that you made, like, these are all my heroes. He's like, all of these guys, all of these blues players, they're all my heroes. I mean, this is where I got my mojo from, and I love them all. And he seems to get along with everybody. He's never mistreated anybody. And this is where I think the culture now is kind of just going in a direction that a lot of us are just scratching our head going, okay, so why is there a problem? Or he bought this car and, he decided to paint the car and he's still in trouble. So, I mean, I don't know where you go with this, Charles. I'm just sitting here looking at this going, and I know you have a couple, I think you might've had an example on your end, but the Kenny Wayne Shepherd thing just blew me away. I was like, wow.
Well, one thing that I'm going to go out, and maybe some people will agree with this, maybe some people won't, but this is kind of an opinion I'm developing. In a modern age where the internet exists, there are just some people, and we've always had those who love to stir up drama. I mean, it's always been around, okay? Yeah. But now that the internet exists, there are people who just sit around, surf the web, they find these things, and they just stir up crap. I mean, it's political correctness run amok, okay?
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier about like Leonard Skinner and the Ballad of Curtis Lowe. But with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and the thing with like the General Lee, we all know what happened to the Dukes of Hazzard show some years back. Matter of fact, I think what really sparked it was a tragedy that took place, actually, I believe, here in South Carolina with the Mother Emanuel Church. And I think that started a lot of it. I think that's when they kind of stopped putting the Dukes of Hazzard on television, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here's what I got to say about all of that. First of all, the Dukes of Hazzard TV show, I don't think ever, other than the car, which is the go-to, really did or portrayed anything that controversial. Correct. It was a goofy sheriff that made Barney Fife look like a brain trust. Okay, it was a greedy boss / mayor or whatever his official title was, who wanted a farm like no one's business. Okay. and it was a family who lived on the farm that, just tried to mind their own business, et cetera, et cetera. And there's always a car chase. And let's be honest, it in a lot of ways was capitalizing off of success of movies such as like Smokey and the Bandit, for example.
Yeah.
Right? Like people were getting really into these muscle cars back in the day. So, they tried to come up with something for that show that kind of fit the South.
Yeah.
That would fit basically. You had this black Trans Am that everyone wanted to buy with the big Firebird on the hood. Okay. And it's flying, off the shelf. So we want to capitalize on that. So we need to make our version of it. I mean, and you also had things like, the Knight Rider show. So cars were becoming a really big part of things at that time. Most people, again, the group that are supposed to be the most offended by these things, right? Funny enough, I talked to a lot of those people and they claim like they watched the Dukes of Hazzard too, and they weren't trying to cancel it back in 1980 whatever. Right. This is all taking place years after it happened. Okay. And yeah, if you want to remove that from the top of the General Lee, then really you don't have a complete replica of the General Lee. And lastly, here's the thing, and I've said this a lot too. If we're going to get into the controversy of Southern imagery, such as what sits on top of the General Lee, okay, I've admitted this myself. Okay, I think an image or a symbol is only what you make it to be.
Yeah.
For example, and I know this is quite a stretch here because we were talking Southern rock and country, but I'm going to make a stretch to someone way out on the other end of the spectrum. And he is going through some pretty heavy controversy of his own right now. Nothing along the lines of what we're talking about, but
Yeah.
Marilyn Manson actually made a lot of these points when he was, on TV and stuff a lot during the 90s and early 2000s because of what took place around that time. And he was being deemed as a very controversial figure. But when they asked him why he did certain antics, for example, he would come out and he would rip pages out of a Bible. He would come out, he would do certain things with an American flag that a lot of people, if you thought kneeling on a flag was disrespectful, you'd absolutely, hate to see what he did or whatever, right? So,
right.
But he made a point of saying, I try to make people question what they believe, and these are nothing but symbols. Like it is what you make of it. Okay. Yeah. And so in this case, there's a lot of people. I hear the argument certain people make about how apparently that rendition of that symbol wasn't the original one from back in those days. Like this is some recent rendition that came back around the early 1900s. It was altered and it was used specifically to cause division and fear. Okay. Yeah. And maybe so, but I don't think that within the last 20 to 30 years that it's predominantly been used that way. Sure, some people might have, but again, a symbol is only what you make of it. The symbol of the Germans during the 1930s, the other very controversial symbol,
right,
never meant anything about controversy before it was being used by the Germans in 1930. Okay, if you look historically at that symbol, it had absolutely nothing to do with such things previous to that. So when you take this symbol, I think over time people began to just take it and incorporate it into this Southern heritage thing, which was we're rebels in the South. Mm-hmm. We kind of beat to the tune of our own drum. Yeah. Okay. And it was kind of turned into from this to this. And I believe symbols can evolve over a period of time. For example, it might start as one thing, but it could end up being something else. But people are wanting to go back in history and say, no, if it ever stood for this once upon a time, then you can't ever have it up at all. Like you can't change what it means, et cetera, et cetera. So I think a lot of these people now, kind of like myself, never ever thought of it being such a bad issue. And maybe that was an ignorance on our part. But I've said this multiple times. Up until within the last few years, that imagery never bothered me. And I actually had a few things and clothes that had it on it. Yeah. I eventually got to the point where I said, okay, I kind of accepted, like, okay, it's just causing people that much trouble. It's a small image. And there's plenty of other imagery that can portray Southern culture and Southern lifestyle. You don't have to have that one. Yeah. I personally, don't think that everyone's trying to use it that way, but if it's that one thing, sure. The only problem though is the people who seem to make such a big deal, they get so outraged. I mean, you tell me if you disagree. It's never enough. Cancel culture never gets enough. It's like a drug to these people. They got to keep canceling something. Yeah. And it's the old adage, give them an inch and they take a mile. Yeah. Literally it's going to be this, and then it's going to keep snowballing over time. It's just never going to stop. We live in a world, again, people are so addicted to the internet, so addicted to social media. Yeah. People don't talk anymore. You don't try to understand the other person's point of view. Right. And so they literally just want to sit around, especially in the age from 2020 when people were stuck in their homes. That just made it even worse. Yeah. Because now you're being told don't go out of the house. So you're literally just sitting around all day surfing the web, going on, Netflix or whatever, social media. And you're becoming a hermit in your home, constantly surfing the web. And the more you constantly dive into stuff, the more it affects, your mental, how you are mentally.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I know people who drive trucks and they sit around all day long and listen to nothing but talk radio.
Right.
And you watch the change in the way they think, the way they talk, the way they were before and the way they are after. And it's almost like they sat there and went nuts from it.
Yeah.
Like literally everything is this big conspiracy all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's easy to get into that rabbit hole. And I think cancel culture is definitely going to that point too. But it's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad because a lot of musicians and really good music are being thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
By this political outrage. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I have a small list of bands like Leonard Skinner, Molly Hatchet, The Outlaws, 38 Special. I look at radio airplay for bands that Charlie Daniels band. I never hear Charlie Daniels on the radio anymore. I mean, Devil Went Down to Georgia maybe once in a great while, but things like Long Haired Country Boy, nope, no way. Marshall Tucker Band, and then the Allman Brothers, who the Allman Brothers Band are like, to me, in a very elite category of real high caliber musicians, and they basically birthed the entire jam band movement, most of it, along with the Grateful Dead and some other groups that used to play for 17 minutes, and basically that's just one track, and
right.
But that was the stuff that used to get a lot of airplay on FM radio. But I've noticed that I talk a lot on this channel about focus testing, about how there are these people, and they'll just be cliche here, that are living in ivory towers, in high-rise corporate, skyscrapers in Los Angeles and New York and wherever. And they're just looking down at, flyover country, literally. And they're saying to themselves, they don't like this. They're not going to like this. And they do a poll, or they do some research, market research. And quite honestly, this stuff it's like going extinct, and like I said, I did a video a little while ago about this, and I was surprised at a lot of the reactions I got, where people who are always listening, like they have a classic rock station that they listen to, and they said, yeah, you're right. I never hear the Outlaws. I hear one song by 38 Special, and that's Hold On Loosely. Okay. And then, when I was growing up, I mean, that was a good band. It was a quality band. They're, an offshoot from the Skinnerd family, and all of it. Basically, they're all kind of interconnected to some degree. And it's just sad, because it's kind of like, okay, we're just going to take your choices away from you. And you're not, it's kind of like when they will take something away that you were always watching and you don't notice it right away. Like, you don't notice it, and it's like, gone and not forgotten. But then after a while, you start to think to yourself, like, you're crazy. Like, hey, did I used to hear this stuff, but now I don't hear it? Or visually, they used to, I used to see these videos, and now they're not recommending these videos anymore to me. You know what I mean? It's almost like one giant algorithm is running the country. And and one of my big complaints with radio, and I know you listen to some new rock, some mainstream rock, it used to coexist back in the day, where you could have an artist, a Southern rock band, a blues artist, an alternative rock band, and you would mash it together. And I thought this was great for radio, because variety is good. You're not just setting this depressing tone. Like, you might have a party band that rocks and is optimistic and just tells, like we used to have the girls in the cars and just the cruising, what we would call cruising music, Now there's no cruising music. It's all like, oh, everything's so serious and depressing, and get over it. You need some balance. I'm not saying you can't have some serious music out there. I will say this, Charles, you were telling me about Five Finger Death Punch, right? Yeah. I will give them credit. They're still playing their own instruments. It's not a computer generated, pop band, like, it just a bunch of sounds and Pro Tools, whatever they're using on their computer, and one guy is producing and writing all the songs. And I'm talking about, all your Grammy Award winners these days.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your opinion on like the lack of variety? And you would think, right, you were talking about how diversity is, a good thing maybe, and a lot of these Southern rock bands took their cues from African Americans who paved the way. And none of those bands were trying to like say, no, this was us. If anything, they were pointing people to those artists. The rock guitar players were always paying homage to blues guitar players who basically set them up. Nobody was ever saying, well, we want to cancel these people who started this. No, everybody, Elvis Presley, you mentioned, Eric Clapton, all these people pointed back and said, no, I got my mojo, from Buddy Guy or from Howlin' Wolf or somebody who is instrumental in, setting the table, and it's just weird now because I don't know, there's no musical diversity, and people are kind of being funneled into these narrow lanes, and you got to stay in your lane. If you get out of your lane, you're not cool, or there's only so much room on the highway. And if you're not, doing what everybody else is doing, then it's lame. I don't know. I used to like those days where you could turn on a rock station and hear kind of a Southern rock song, a blues rock song, which is kind of one and the same to some degree. But the Southern rock, a lot of it had a lot more soul too. Like Skynyrd had a lot more soul. And other bands, even the Allman Brothers Band, Greg Allman, Dwayne Allman. I mean, these are just great players. And it's just sad that you don't hear that kind of artistry anymore.
Yeah. And, I'll start by saying this real quick. You can even take one that might have come a little bit after those, but take a band like ZZ Top for a minute and tell me they didn't get influence from someone like Chuck Berry or from Muddy Waters.
Oh yeah.
Okay. That was, it heavily influenced how they did their music. And as far as the music being able to coexist, even though Johnny Cash is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a lot of people credit Johnny Cash for being a country musician, a country music artist.
Yep.
Elvis, the king of rock and roll. Well, guess what? When they first came on the scene in the 60s, they were doing shows together.
Right.
That was country and rock. Well, eventually people kind of separated them off into their columns. I'm fine with having the mixture channel. And I'm also not opposed to, new styles that come along over a period of time. But I think one thing, what you talked about kind of reminds me of something Tim McGraw, another country artist, said in a song, his song Back When. Okay. Yeah. And he talked about the way things used to be. Well, there's one line that always kind of stuck out to me in that song. And that was, I had my favorite stations, the ones that played them all, country, soul, rock and roll. What happened to those times? He followed that up by then saying, I'm reading street slang for dummies because they put pop in my country. I want more for my money the way it was back when.
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, it's, and I'm not, look, I got nothing against some of these more, modern country artists like Luke Bryan or whatever, but let's just be honest. Calling what they're doing country music and putting them in the column with, some of the same people like Waylon Jennings, George Strait, Alabama, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Charlie Pride, Buck Owens.
Yeah. Putting
them in that column just because they're probably wearing cowboy boots and have a belt buckle would be like, putting the Beatles and Five Finger Death Punch in the same column and just saying rock. Like it's so different. It's so let's go even further than that. It would be like putting the Rolling Stones in with, take the heaviest thing, like Kill Switch Engage.
Yeah.
There you go. That's heavy screamo, to an extent. Now that's not death metal. Full disclosure, I can't go that heavy. Kill Switch Engage is about one of the heaviest ones that I can listen to, and there's only so many of their stuff I can listen to.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got the real dark side of metal too, man. They've made these genres, but they've named them over the years. You have rock and roll, you have boogie woogie, you have what we deem now as classic rock. You've got, you know, the hair, you know, the hair metal.
Yeah.
You've got what some people called like with just heavy metal. Then you got, you know, the rock, I guess people call it like an alternative rock, I guess, in a way, the grunge.
Yeah.
A lot of people call it grunge. That's what came after the 80s with Iron Maiden, Metallica, and all that. You got the Nirvanas, the Stone Temple Pilots, you know, Bush, Smashing Pumpkins. You've got all that stuff that came out in the 90s. And then you've got what rolled on into the 2000s, which people called new metal.
Yeah.
And they spelled it so a particular way because of the influence that was in it. So by the time you get to the late 90s, rap's coming a little more on the scene, whatever.
Yeah.
They spelled new metal N-U-metal. Okay.
Right.
And the reason why is because you had the bands like Korn, Slipknot, and other folks who were trying to take metal and mix it with elements of rap in a way. If you listen to like some of how fast they would, you know, put lyrics out there. I'm not going to say sing per se, but if you want to use that, sure.
Yeah.
But they tried to mix. So I'm not opposed to that, but at least name it properly. That's my only thing with like the modern country music. But yeah, I don't think any of these Southern rock styles, and you talked about what they're not playing on the radio anymore. Full disclosure, the last time I did listen to a classic rock channel, I don't think they were canceling Charlie Daniels too much up here.
Yeah.
Because we're in the Carolinas, and I'll be honest though, I don't listen to much actual radio anymore.
Right.
Not because I don't like music. I play music all the time. I just use my Spotify playlist.
Yep.
But the biggest reason that I can't listen to radio around here is because of a man named Jay Gilstrap. He has these car commercials and they drive me bonkers. And it doesn't matter. You go to any radio station, you go to country, you could go to new rock, you can go to classic rock, you can go to whatever. He's on everything. You know, he's on everything. You know, he as a guy once said, he is like a tick on genitals. He just hangs around.
Wow.
Okay. You can't get rid of this guy. I mean, he's terrible. So I literally got to the point before I got a car that already had a Bluetooth radio in it. I was to the point like years ago, I was having to buy FM transmitters.
Yep.
It's like I can't deal with him anymore. Like his commercials were just terrible. But that being said, I've heard them actually use like the long-haired country boys song. I don't know if they're doing it right now or not, but I know they were.
Yeah.
What kills me though, and I got a feeling you're going to know this name, is in the midst of all this controversy.
Yeah.
Maybe I've just missed something, but I haven't heard the calls to cancel David Allen Coe.
Oh.
Now, how familiar are you with David Allen Coe's songs?
Not as much as I should be, because he was this was way before I got into country. And I have listened to some of his stuff, but there's got to be you're going to bring up a certain like song, or you're going to bring up a theme of his.
Yeah. So he had his most notorious song, and I'm going to make sure I get the name of the one I'm about to tell you about real quick. So, but his most notorious song was, you know, the one, Never Call Me by My Name. I might not be getting the title quite right, but you know, it was the one, I was drunk the day my mom got out of prison. It's supposed to be like the perfect country song that his friend wrote or whatever. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he wrote his friend back and he said that, you know, he had not written the perfect country and Western song because he didn't mention anything about his mama or trains or trucks or getting drunk or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So his friend wrote a verse back to add to the whole song he just sang at that point. Right. And the verse was, I was drunk the day my mom got out of prison and I went to pick her up in the rain. But before I could get to the station in my pickup truck, she got run over by a train. Okay. So that's the one most people know him for.
Yeah.
But
I have to go
he
listen
had
to
a
that.
song in particular, okay, called "If That Ain't Country." Now, I've heard the song, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. There, I, I don't know how I want to say this, honestly, but I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, the majority of the song is a decent country song.
Yep.
But there's one little line very early in that song where he talks about how hard he and his family were working back in the day.
Yep.
And he drops a particular word, working like a something.
Okay.
And the word he used starts with an N, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Just leave it there.
Leave it there.
Leave it there.
So is he still? Is he alive still?
Yeah. Well, honestly, let me check on that because I knew he was, but I haven't kept up with him in a while. Let me see. He if he passed, it had to be just within the last few years, though.
Yeah, they would probably say super controversial country artist.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything on him being dead, and it shows right now he's 81 years old. So
81.
To my knowledge, yeah, he's still alive. but that being said, like while you've got these people who are canceling, this just goes to show you, in my opinion, just like a lot of the people who talk about like Second Amendment stuff, you got a lot of people who are finding something, trying to make it a big deal, and they don't even know what else is truly out there.
Right.
Like David Allen Coe he never made it to like in my opinion, the level of George Strait or someone, right? But he was big enough.
Yeah.
He was big enough. Okay. And if you're not out there canceling that, you know, why are you out here making such a big deal again over imagery that someone probably innocently was using and didn't even mean in that way?
Yeah.
So that just creates a whole nother problem. It's a toxicity where people just, I guess, you hear about all the problems that we got.
Yeah.
How we don't have wages that grow and jobs that disappear and things of that nature. And you'd think that with all these problems, people would have more time on their hands to worry about things. But I guess somehow or another, they're well enough off that these are the things that make them lose sleep at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not condoning anyone who wants to use symbols like that in a bad way. I mean, you shouldn't do that. But
yeah, or words like you said, that one particular word, which I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me, that word used to appear a lot in the 1970s on television shows like The Jeffersons and also All in the Family.
It was used a couple of times, I think, on All in the Family, but it also came up on Sanford and Son a few times too.
Okay, so you're on this. And I'm curious if they've removed those particular episodes from the rerun catalog, or if they're still out there, or you have to like get HBO Max in order to watch. I mean, I don't know, $15 a month, and you can finally watch Friends. We took it off of Netflix, and it's my wife just loves that show, and we have it already. But some of that stuff, you start watching it even from the 90s, and I'm like, but they said that then. I don't think they could say that now. And it's the thing about the music industry, though. Artists, they have, certain artists, they sing about certain topics. Like if you go listen to like Bruce Springsteen or Bob Dylan, or a lot of these guys that are very lofty with words, we'll say, and they cover all kinds of subjects, some of it controversial. Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, one of the chief songwriters, talking about a lot of like nuclear proliferation and just, you know, the whole thing's going to explode. It's going to, you know, there's going to be a mother bomb basically, and it's going to be the end. And if we don't get a hold of things, and for a while, I was kind of like, you know what? It's not necessarily what I want to listen to all the time, but you should have the right to say, I think, what you want to say in songs. And the other thing is, when you hear a certain artist, you might expect them to be a certain way if they've been that way in the past. You don't expect them to sing about, you know, girls in cars cruising down the road. You know right. that you might get something a little bit more cerebral, you know, like you might have to think about these lyrics, or they're trying to convey their message to you through music. And I think that's all good. I think all of that is good. I think I'm not a big rap guy, but I think I've heard some creative raps back in the day where they use a lot, and country artists do this too. They use real clever rhymes, clever phrases, different play on words. And it's art. It's real creative. Mm-hmm. I'm just worried that if you're kind of trying to, it's like you're trying to make, you had mountains and you had valleys and you had rivers and you had lakes and oceans. Everybody's trying to flatten it all out now, make just like the Great Plains for everybody. You like the Great Plains? That's all you're going to get. You're going to get a flat old landscape, no more mountains, no more deviations. We want to, you know, take all the sharp objects out of the room, you know, and that means, you know, these lyrics, we need to sanitize these lyrics. However, Charles, on the other side of this, there's a lot of lyrics that if you're, say, there's certain stores that I really don't like to shop at. My wife likes to go to one in particular where I put up with, before I walk in, I say, I'm going to hate the music in this store. I'm going to just absolutely hate it. And we walk in and I'm listening to the music I don't like. And then I'm listening to some of these lyrics, and there are kids walking around. There are, you know, families walking around. There are women walking around, because it's a lot of women that shop at this particular store. I'm not going to name the store. Don't want to get in any trouble, but it's one of them trendy places. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm pointing up at the speaker. I'm like, they allow this. But they don't want, you know, Confederate Railroad singing Trashy Women, you know, which is a goofy song. And they say, well, it's sexist, you know, it's totally. No, he's saying this is the kind of woman he likes, and has nothing to do with that. I mean, he's not saying every woman is like that. It's like a cartoon to me. It's just like the Roadrunner, although you got to be careful, because I could say Pepe Le Pew, and that might get me in trouble too. I mean, I don't know. So this is like you go down a road, Charles, and there's like one of them red stoppers at the end of the road, and you're like, crap, it's a dead end. Where do I go? You know? So, I mean, I just wonder why certain things are completely unacceptable, and then other things that are equally offensive in different ways are blaring out of a speaker somewhere in a retail establishment right out in public.
So I'm going to dive into that one, because that's real good. But you brought up the skunk. So I got to respond about the skunk.
All right.
Now, you know what I've done on my channel in the past with my impersonation of our lovely president right now, right?
Okay. Yep.
And I've kind of thrown a little bit of a Herbert the pervert, you know, impersonation.
And for my viewers, what show is that from? Just
from
so they know.
Family Guy.
There you go. Okay.
So Family Guy has a character, is a very old man who loves to give candy to the little kids. Okay. That being said, that's pretty cringe, right?
Right.
But how popular is Family Guy? Another character, here's even worse. Pepe Le Pew, the skunk. Okay.
Yes.
They're trying to cancel him for saying he promoted a certain culture that caused a lot of problems. You know, we're trying to walk the fine line with the wording here, but I think the audience can get
we know where they're going. He's running after, and typically he would corner a cat, because the cat, and then like every episode there'd be like a can of paint that would create a stripe or something on the back of the cat. Every episode, the same thing. And he mistakes the cat for a skunk, and the cat wants no part of it, which makes sense, because skunks and cats typically don't, hang out and procreate. So you got me going down this road, Charles. Again, there's the red stopper at the end. You pick it up from here.
Here's the good part, though. Going back to Family Guy, like we're gonna cancel the skunk, which is just doing all this stuff. And by the way, okay, how many times did this terrible, misogynistic skunk ever get his way?
0.
Okay, but go back to Family Guy.
Yep.
You got a character named Quagmire.
Oh, dear God, Quagmire. Forgot about
Now, Quagmire is literally what they try to pretend old Pepe is over here, okay? Pepe never got his way. There's been quite a few episodes where you got Quagmire literally carrying a passed out woman into his house, and then when he sees them, one was watching him, he's like, oh, there's nothing to see here.
Right.
Like, this is a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's not being marketed necessarily toward kids in the way that Looney Tunes was, you can't tell me there are not kids watching this show.
Right.
Now, I might not look it, but I haven't been out of school that long, okay? Most people don't recognize my age and think that I'm somewhere still in the mid-20s, but I am.
Yeah.
And when I was in the 4th and 5th grade, there were kids talking about going home and watching Family Guy and how funny it was.
Mm-hmm.
So that's elementary school, and they're watching this. So you tell me, who's causing more problems here? The skunk or the literal guy who's dragging women's who he probably, used some Bill Cosby moves on over here? Okay? Like literally, it's so bass-ackwards, as we say here. It's so bass-ackwards, okay? They don't cancel culture it's to the point it's not even making good sense.
No.
For a lot of this stuff, they're canceling the skunk, which was humorous, and nothing was ever even insinuated that the skunk got his way.
Yeah.
Okay, the cat always won somehow or another, right? But then you keep on cheering the show like Family Guy. Like, that's still on the air. It hasn't been canceled. Right. It's actually ran its course, been canceled, and came back, I think, once or twice.
Yeah.
So clearly people love this show. Another show that people love that makes all kinds of comments about people that have red hair and maybe of a particular faith, South Park.
Yeah.
And these shows are being watched in droves. There's a rapper out there, Tom McDonald, who kind of hinted towards some of the stuff when we started hearing a lot about the Me Too culture. He even put into his some of his songs 2 lyrics I'm going to give you here. The first one is, "What else did you expect from the kids that went to Hooters after school?" The next lyric in another song was,
argue with that,
"We grew up watching South Park. Why are we offended?"
Yeah, I mean,
so
exactly.
Yeah, it just doesn't even make any sense. I don't know why people lost their marbles and just started getting so touchy over a lot of things, but it's ridiculous. It's causing a lot of problems, and in many cases, the things who are really causing more of the issue they're complaining about, they're not canceling that. They're canceling something far less dangerous, and here's something else that, like I pointed out, if we're talking about probably people who should be canceled, if we're talking about certain things that get portrayed, to kids, I got to say this one. Okay. Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus. Now, the reason, look, I've got an appreciation for people like Marilyn Manson and what he did, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying cancel Marilyn Manson, even though they're already doing that because of some allegations that have just come out on him.
Right.
But pretending that never happened, I wouldn't be calling for him to be canceled. The only reason, I'm not necessarily calling for her to be canceled. My biggest problem with someone like Miley Cyrus is this whole concept of they're advocating for these things, or it's being portrayed to kids, for example, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
there's my big problem with her.
Yeah.
Someone like Marilyn Manson burst on the scene by being this controversial figure in the first place.
Right. Right.
What he didn't do was become a star on a Disney show and then morph that into being the controversial character. She did. She was the musician on a Disney show that kids watched.
Right.
She was on clothes. She was on TV. She was on, magazine covers. She's on book bags for kids. I mean, she was this kid's icon. Okay. Right. And she was in music. So then naturally, when she really pursued a musical career outside of Disney, kids followed. Well, guess what? When she first started, her content was still fairly clean and acceptable for children. But when she figured out that there was more money to be made in going the other way, how quickly did she turn? The next thing you know, she's riding wrecking balls with no clothes on.
Yes.
Bringing out these unicorn appendages onto stage with multiple colors all over them. Like kids shouldn't be seeing that, in my opinion. Like, and it's a parenting thing, but let's be honest, some parents don't prefer to kind of watch today's pop culture like religiously. Right. So they saw Hannah Montana, they knew it was Miley Cyrus. They said, "Oh, that's that Miley Cyrus. Yeah, she's pretty good and wholesome."
Yeah.
And then the kid goes out and watches it, and poof, there you go. Like, so I got a problem with that, because you made your name off of being this, and you turned into you went down to a level, in my opinion, controversially, almost like Marilyn Manson.
Right.
Okay. That's a complete 180. So again, if cancel culture really wants something to gripe about, they really should probably target things that are really potentially causing more problems for, young minds who are still developing in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
I don't think Pepe Le Pew did that. I think Quagmire's far worse on that than Pepe was. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but here's the problem, Dave. I mean, let's just be honest. The reason they don't want to cancel those things are because they probably enjoy those things. They're canceling the things that came long before they were listening to music. Notice it's all these older groups, and they don't know all of them. That's why they didn't cancel David Allen Coe yet. But you wait. If it ever comes out to light and it ever makes mainstream news, he will be canceled. Right. Okay. Right. Perhaps someone's going to hear this, and that might be what starts. You never know. But it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, you talked about kind of sanitizing all these lyrics and things like that. Ryan Upchurch kind of made a statement about this, and he was talking about Alabama, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
We already know that the Dixie Chicks, of course, dropped Dixie and just became the Chicks. So he was talking about how they're doing all these things to try to appease the cancel culture.
Yeah.
So we start talking about it. He's like, what's Alabama going to do for the song Dixieland Delight? What is it just going to be called Land Delight now? Like, what are we going to do here? Like,
and they might, and they probably should rename their band Oregon, right? Instead of Alabama.
Yeah. Or just,
sorry.
You can't, I would say go with Washington, because, you got Seattle, but then there's going to be the issue of Washington and what did he do when he was alive?
Oh, that's right. See, that's why Oregon
go there. Better.
Yeah.
So Oregon. I mean, yeah, it's absolutely crazy, but they don't want to cancel the stuff that's come along in a lot of cases during their lifetime, because, quite frankly, they still enjoy that. And that's a hypocrisy in a way, isn't it? But give credit where credit is due, even though, Eminem isn't as controversially active as he used to be. He used to be a lot worse in his lyrics.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he has toned some of them down in the last, few albums he's made over the years.
Right.
But he kind of predicted that the cancel culture would come after him. And of course they did. They tried to go after him for a song, I think, from like 10 years ago. Right. And I hey, like the man or not, give credit where it's due. He released, he already had the song out, but then he put a video together for it. song tone deaf, basically. Like, yeah, you complain about me all you want, I can't hear you, just like I'm tone deaf, basically, right? So
right.
I mean, he isn't scared to push back against them, you know, in the cancel culture. But it's if this doesn't stop, it's gonna tear everything that has made America in a lot of ways what it is.
Yeah.
The freedom to have the diversity, you know, and that's ironic because you hear about the fact we want more diversity, right?
Sure.
But we're trying to make all the music the same. We're trying, you know, it's almost like we're wanting to remove certain diversity we've already had, but create this new diversity that we don't think we've had.
Right.
And it's just crazy, you know.
Yeah.
If we're not careful, no one's going to be able to truly laugh at comedy anymore.
Correct.
And music already, in my opinion, is not what it used to be. Now, there's certain artists out there who I still like today, and I've been kind of talking about some of that on my channel.
Yeah.
But you talked about the lyrics of old. You know, you talked about the stuff that would go into these songs, and you talked about, you know, the nuclear proliferation. Here's another one that you can throw into that column. Killer of Giants, Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh yeah.
He warned of what could happen with like the nuclear stuff too. Those lyrics had deep meaning.
Right.
And music just doesn't contain that today. And Tom McDonald even said that in one of his songs. I don't remember which one it was recently, but he said all the music that we make is about big booties and getting paid.
Yeah.
Like, you know, okay. Catchy tune if you want to go to the club, have a few drinks, and throw a party, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's nothing there that to me shows an appreciation for art, really. It's like low-hanging fruit in a lot of ways. You don't see the creativity. You don't see where someone put their heart and soul into a song.
Right.
And that's what made music great. Some of the greatest music that was ever written was when someone was able to relate to the things they were putting on paper and put their soul into it. They weren't just mass producing content for a record label to make money.
Yeah.
You can usually tell when someone's just doing it to make money and they're just trying to mass produce this content to meet a market demand because that's what the pop culture is pushing. Okay, you can tell that certain bands will then alter their style to try to stay up to tune with this stuff, right? And try to, you know, that they sound completely different than they did 10 years ago because they're trying to be the chameleon and adapt and blend in, right? But then you've got other people who just stayed true to who they were over the years too.
Right.
You know, and even though, you know, like with the Dixie Chicks, some of their stuff was okay.
Mm-hmm.
But and I think they kind of really, like, I think it was a long time past when the Dixie stuff was an issue to do what they did with the name change. But nonetheless, you know, they kind of, I defended them in a lot of ways when they did what they did with their song when they criticized Bush. You know, and they got a lot of the cancel treatment too. You got to understand, you know, that's what made a lot of the rock in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s what it was they were not afraid to push back. I don't even remember the name of the group, and I don't know that I've ever even listened to any of their songs, but there was the infamous clip of the group of ladies who were performing music at some presidential dinner or something, and Richard Nixon introduces them. And, you know, he of course doesn't think they're going to come up there and say anything bad about him. So he's getting a good laugh and he's giving them the introduction. And they get on stage and then they actually hold up a poster, like a big banner, criticizing Nixon to his face on the war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just like, I guess the only thing we can say was similar to that was what they did when Trump was in office, you know, and a lot of the music celebrities and stuff came out and said things against him. But you know what? I mean, regardless of where the parties are at, we've been having problems in a lot of those areas for the last 20, 30 years. Okay.
Yeah.
We need more music that talks about the problems. We need more music that talks about the struggles we're facing in society. And we need musicians who aren't afraid to just tell the truth and call it out,
Right. Right.
whether it be Trump, whether it be Biden, whether it be Bush, whether it be Clinton,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, right. Just tell the truth, and we need music where people put their heart into music. And if cancel culture gets their way, that's going to be gone. And that's been a big foundation of all recent American culture is our music, and it influences in a lot of cases the rest of the world, or it used to.
Mm-hmm.
That could go away.
Yeah.
The comedy comedians will be nothing like they used to be. Even the sitcoms. And we mentioned Sanford and Son, All in the Family, The Jeffersons. And there's been a few sitcoms in a few years after that were good. But tell me, what good sitcoms are on TV today? Not reruns. I want to know what new ones are on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like the only thing I could possibly even point to would be something like The Ranch that was on Netflix, but it's just not on TV anymore.
Yeah.
They've sponged that. They've wiped that. They've got to sanitize all that down. I mean, we're going to lose a big part of Americana if people just keep bending a knee and giving in to these people who have nothing better to do than try to stir the pot and cause trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, pretty much amen to everything you said there. I was thinking when you're talking about controversial songs that really aren't controversial, every Christmas now, I got to worry about Baby, It's Cold Outside. Baby, It's Cold Outside. And I was lectured one time on Twitter about how I won't use the word, but how someone said it was RAPEY, the song was. And I'm like, compared to what? I mean, to me, I've heard the song a million times. They don't play it as much as they used to, though. But every Christmas, I'm thinking to myself, all right, it's cold. He's flirtatious. This woman decides she's, instead of going out in the cold, she's going to stay with him, or if that's how the song ends, and they both sing at the end. And it's like from the 1940s, I think, is when it came out originally. 40s or 50s. And it's got kind of that sound to it. And what's crazy is people are making a big deal about that. And you just mentioned a whole bunch of things. First you were talking about Miley Cyrus. I got to say, Billy Ray, what the heck happened, brother? I got to throw this back at him because he's the good old country boy singing Amazing Grace and, Achy Breaky Heart. And I'm thinking to myself, something went wrong there. But anyway, I heard at one point that he was just like, he just said, I wish I could do something and I can't do anything about this. She's an adult. She can do what she wants with her life, and she's making $1 billion riding the wrecking ball. So who am I to stop her? I'm like, okay, and then I was thinking one of the country rock songs that I always loved, which was like, when I was in radio, it was a format buster. We were a mainstream rock station, the one that I was on. And when this song came out, I was like, it's country, but it's got all this grit and attitude, and it's got this sound that I had never really heard on a rock station. And the song, I don't know if you know the song, it's called Copperhead Road by Steve Earle. Yeah. And that song to me, I mean, his vocal performance, I mean, it oozes that Southern rock and country and all this, but it had such of like a kick to it, and that build up and that slow, it puts you in a trance, but it was just such a kick-ass song. And they don't make music like that anymore on any format. There's just, it's nowhere to be found. Steve had some success, a couple of tracks he had from that album and one after it that got some mainstream airplay. But I look back at those days where you could have a Steve Earle on the radio. You could have a Robert Cray on the radio right next to him. Country rock, blues rock, African-American, good old country boy, And I love that. I love that kind of diversity, and I miss it. And you talk about how not only is there a lack of artistic value in the lyrics, Charles, there's a big deficit when it comes to actual musicianship. When you were talking there, we lost, some people think, the greatest guitar player who ever walked the face of the earth last year, and he got a 15-second tribute at the Grammys, which is an abomination. And I'm talking, of course, about Eddie Van Halen. There's nobody that I know. There are no Eddie Van Halens coming. There are no guitar prodigies. Name one, and you mentioned a bunch of music from the 90s. Name the great guitarist of the 90s, the list of great guitar players from the 90s. Name the great guitar players of the early 2000s. There are none. I mean, I'm sure there are good proficient players.
And if there were any, some of them are dead too. Like one would be Dimebag Darrell, but he was shot and killed at a performance.
Oh, geez, see, I don't see that's why you're on, Charles, because you're filling in the blanks for me. You're not shooting the blanks, you're filling in the blanks. So, but we're going to wrap up because I promised that, we talked and I said, we got to try to stick to an hour here. And we had a great conversation. I think you added a lot of flavor to this because of your perspective. You're closer to the music of the last 20 or 30 years than I am. So that's helpful to me because I need to learn more about what's going on out there. I tend to kind of, I'm the old man on the lawn, and anything that goes by, I'm just like, it's no good, and sometimes I need to give it a listen. I've had some patrons on the channel that have sent me links to things. A song like by Disturbed, I didn't think I was going to like, and I listened to it and I go, okay, this isn't bad. Typically, if I say back to somebody, well, I don't hate it, it means that's a victory for me if I don't hate it. But Charles, tell everybody about your channel. Since this is the first time you're on this channel with me. Tell everybody about your channel, what you do, the name, where to find it, and so forth.
So yeah, you can find me over on YouTube. The channel is the Lone Wolf Podcast. What we've tried to focus on the channel is politics from an independent standpoint. So, I some areas lean a little to the left, some areas I lean a little to the right. What I really want to try to do is find a way to bring the unity together because, I think we've got a lot of problems. And the only way we're going to, take our country back and get things done for the people again is when we figure out to stop letting things like the cancel culture, whatever, control the conversation. We've got to have these talks. We've got to find the issues we agree on, focus on that, set the disagreements to the side for now, try to work together. And that's the only way. And as long as we don't, play this chess game, we keep trying to treat it like a game of checkers, we're going to keep losing. So that's a focus. But, one thing I'm doing every Monday, I'm going to try to whip something together up for tomorrow, but I didn't get a lot of chance to edit this week, but I do the Unity Through Music segment. I do it every Monday. So what I try to do, and I don't discriminate on any type of, genre of music, some I listen to a lot more than others, but I'll touch on country. I'll touch on classic rock, metal, even rap. And we're going to take lyrics. We're going to break them down. I try to get a song that I think has deep meaning, like some of the ones we've been talking about, whether it be about war, societal issues, the government, the working class man, or whatever. Take those, break down the lyrics and break them down. So, the last one I just did, the Ballad of Ira Hayes, talking about the Marine from World War II. He was at the Battle of Iwo Jima, a classic Johnny Cash song. So doing that every Monday. You can find me over on Twitter at VigilantIndaP1. And, try to upload content about 2 or 3 times a week when I can. So hope you'll come over and check me out.
All right, man. That's awesome. Charles's channel is growing. We're going to get him to 10,000 subscribers. We'll see if we can shoot for, we'll get you to 1,000 and then we'll shoot for 10,000. But he's working hard over there and he's building an audience slowly. It's difficult today, based on the content that Charles is doing. Charles is trying the unity. It doesn't seem like anybody really wants to do unity. They want to do one hard way on one side or one hard way on the other side. And they're just like, no, I can't hear you. And then you've got obviously people who are in the media business who are complicit in trying to, segregate everything. Let's just be honest. And that's the way, when we were talking about music, it's like, I thought we didn't want segregation. I thought we didn't want it. But
Yeah.
we're going back in that direction, which is really sad to me. And that, sort of undergirds my view of back in the, the 80s and early 90s when I was in the business, that our playlist, and I didn't even think about it back then, but our playlist was pretty diverse. We had a good, variety of music. And if you're in top 40 in those days too, it was the same thing. I mean, there was rock, there was pop, there was rap, there was funky dance music, there was hair metal. I mean, there's something for everybody. If you didn't like one song, the next one's coming up, So anyway, I want to thank Charles from the Lone Wolf Podcast. We'll put a link to his channel in the description box of this video, I promise. And check Charles out. And of course, thanks again, everybody, for watching. Don't forget about Patreon. If you want to support this channel, you can do so for just $1 a month. That's all it is. If you want to give $2, $5, that's entirely up to you. But Charles, thanks again for being on, buddy.
Thank you for having me, Dave.